And a happy hump day to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Few changes already starting with your forecast in the form of cloud cover. If you've taken a step outside or just a glance outside, you know it has definitely been a cloudier start this morning compared to the last two where we had a beautiful, beautiful sunrise. So the main headlines for your immediate forecast as we close out the work week, flirting with record warm temperatures. Yes, we are flirting with not only the 80s, but some record-breaking numbers. So we'll talk about where those records do stand for the next couple of days. Rain chances are increasing day by day as we go into the end of the work week and into the beginning of the weekend. In terms of having the rain jacket ready to go, I think you can do without it for your Wednesday, maybe even going into tomorrow. However, once you get into Friday and Saturday, those are looking like our best rain chances, and we'll also break down why that is looking to be the case. Another blast of winter as we head into the beginning of next week. Yes, Mother Nature is giving us a quick reminder that we are still in the month of February, so obviously we can get some pretty cold snaps just come out of nowhere virtually. But the good news with this blast of winter, it does look to be brief and short-lived as we go into the beginning of next week. I think we actually are going to wrap up the month of February still on a very warm note with some 60s and 70s in the forecast. So here's a look around the quad where we see plenty of clouds in the sky, but not necessarily looking like too dense of cloud cover. There's sun shining in downtown Dublin. Looks like there's sun shining currently in downtown Macon, but we are going to really kind of have a cloud deck that is really broken in nature throughout today. So what that means is there's plenty of gaps where you can see some blue sky, and there's also going to be plenty of peaks of sunshine that will help contribute to the warming of the surface. But along with that, I want to turn your attention to these flags here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds, where the flags have a bit of a left to right motion right there. So that's going to indicate a southerly component with your winds. And not only that, kind of hard to see from this camera view, maybe the best with this Georgia National Fairgrounds flag right here. It's actually kind of blowing towards the camera a little bit. So there's also a bit of a westerly component to these winds. As you can see, we are facing off to the west of the Georgia National Fairgrounds, indicated by the big W you see right there with the W in the bushes. Warner Robins off Cohen Walker Drive. Pretty quiet picture. Does look like there's plenty of sunshine right now. Can continue to see the shadows of some of these trees off Cohen Walker Drive. So overall, we have plenty of clouds in the forecast, but it's not necessarily correlating to a forecast that we're seeing a whole lot of shade per se. You are going to have moments where the cloud cover is denser than others, but overall it hasn't really stopped your warm up so far this morning. But it did help keep the temperatures at a more reasonable number as you walked out the door. We actually started out in the low 50s today compared to the mid and the upper 30s that we saw yesterday. So we're not alone in this warm spell of weather. We can see that your current temperatures all across the eastern United States are a good mix of the 50s and the 60s, and actually a couple more 70s than we have been used to seeing as of recently. 73 in Jacksonville along with New Orleans, 72, 1 degree cooler over in Houston, 75 in Orlando. It's once you get up into areas of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, the New England area of the country, that's where you start to have some 40s present. Even Virginia Beach, 62 degrees, and you go all the way up to Washington, D.C., a couple hours up I-95. Then you have about a 20-degree drop as far as your temperatures. So going down here into the southeast corner of the United States, I think you can tell where some cloud cover is currently sitting because there is a darker green shade indicating some numbers that are down into the 50s, 55 in Columbus, 57 in Montgomery, and a 59 up in Atlanta. So this is going to be denser cloud cover that's blocking more sunshine compared to areas like Macon at 64, already at 70 in Albany, 70 in Valdosta, and a 70 in Brunswick. As you go farther to the north, of course, you are beginning to see some of those 60s transition maybe down into the 50s. In fact, it does look like almost everyone is really hanging out in the 60s or the 70s as you go down to the southwest, down on the panhandle of Florida and on the Gulf Coast of Alabama. So here in central Georgia specifically, your temperature range looks to be from 60 at the lowest, and that's going to be down in McRae, all the way up to 67 degrees at the warmest in areas like Gordon, Sparta, and all the way down into Cordele. But it does look like scattered about the low and the mid 60s for the most part on your current temperature map as we are into the 11 a.m. hour now. And as we head throughout the afternoon, we are looking to add some 70s to that temperature map. So the winds have been a big talking point as of this morning. If you caught the forecast this morning, I have been talking about this graphic for quite a while, even though the shades of blue haven't been quite as widespread as what you do see here. So I have been referring to number one, that the breeze is going to pick up, and that's what we're currently seeing as the blue color becomes more and more widespread. That's going to indicate some gustier winds, maybe sustained from anywhere from about 3 to maybe 7 to 12 or even 16 miles per hour that we do see down there in Vidalia. But the occasional gusts are going to be up to 20 to 25 miles per hour throughout today. 14-mile-per-hour gusts currently in Milledgeville, but some pretty gusty winds are present right now in Toombs County and Vidalia, up to 21 miles per hour. But you did get a direction of those winds, and we were just talking about it on the quad view of the sky cams at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. They're coming up from the south, and when we have a southerly component to your winds, typically it's associated with pushing a warmer and a more humid air mass into our forecast. That will be very important for breaking down the forecast for the next 3 days. But right now, we're just seeing what looks to be a very gloomy picture on your satellite and radar image. However, we are not necessarily seeing really too many shaded areas, but the brighter white or maybe the lighter gray shade that you do see, kind of like this strip right here going through Bleckley and Twiggs County, that's going to indicate some denser cloud cover in nature. If you get more of a darker gray shade, like kind of what you see over here in eastern Lawrence, southern Johnson, Treutlen County, that's going to indicate some thinner cloud cover as opposed to the thicker cloud cover. And the thinner that cloud cover is, the brighter that it does appear outside, and you're actually getting some peaks of sunshine, actually leading to some shadows on the ground. However, if the cloud cover does get denser, you're not seeing anything in the way of those shadows. But we will continue to have these patchy areas of thinner cloud cover and maybe even some clearing present throughout the day. It is not going to be gloomy all the way through this afternoon, but there will be plenty of clouds in the sky throughout the rest of today. Here's a look at your satellite and radar image. All across the southeast, we are not alone in our forecast. And in fact, I forgot to mention that there is a sprinkle shower over there on the Georgia and Alabama state line. That's going to be the only chance of rain that we have throughout your Wednesday. Hence why I did say I think you can make it without having to need the umbrella or the rain jacket throughout the rest of today. I think it is going to be a very nice forecast for the remainder of the middle of the work week. But now let's talk about the numbers, because right now we're already off to a warm start, already sitting somewhere in the mid 60s in many areas. Well, 72, that was your high temperature as of yesterday. We hit 70 degrees for a high temperature on Monday. So continuing the above average trend and the numbers into the 70s. So feeling very, very spring-like, of course. But obviously, the morning yesterday was definitely not necessarily your cup of tea. 4 degrees below average of 40 degrees. So 36 is what we started out at. Below average morning low, but a well above average afternoon high. In fact, closer to, actually, never mind. I was going to say closer to this record of 81 set back in 2018, but we were 9 degrees off that record. We were just 8 degrees above average, but right smack dab in the middle of average and the record high temperature from yesterday. And thankfully, 10 degrees was not our morning low like we had back in 1958. A very, very cold spell must have taken place there in the late 50s. So no rain recorded. We haven't had any rainfall to talk about since this past weekend. Your departure of rain is now going above 3¼ of an inch below where we should be. So obviously we definitely could still use some rain, even though we tallied about an inch, maybe even about 1.5 inches. Some areas got lucky with about 2.5 inches over the course of this weekend. So we're still eagerly awaiting something in the way of a more widespread rainmaker and maybe with some more significant rainfall totals. But we do look to have rain chances in the near future, and hopefully that will continue to help out with the dry conditions that we've had recently. So for the month of February so far, we continue to really talk about this graphic day by day, and we just continue to add a new red box to each and every day that we've had really over the past week, maybe getting into a week and a half. So from the 9th all the way to the 17th, that is a streak of, if my eyes are doing this right, 9 days in a row where we've had an above average high temperature, and we look to add day number 10 today, day number 11 on Thursday, 12 on Friday, maybe even getting into 13 on Saturday before finally Sunday we might see the numbers return back to close to normal. So it's looking like we're going to get into a stretch where the above average tally is well above what the below average tally sits at. Because when we started out the month of February, it was looking like below average was the name of the game. We were holding on to that cold spell of weather that we did have at the end of January. And you obviously remember the end of January with those 3 consecutive weekends that we had a winter weather potential here in central Georgia. Then we finally got a dry weekend for your Super Bowl. I believe that was Super Bowl weekend, the 7th and the 8th. And then this past weekend, we did have a dry Valentine's Day, very thankfully, but then we welcomed in that widespread rain throughout your Sunday afternoon. So for today, this Wednesday afternoon, partly to mostly cloudy. The scenes that you're seeing right now on the sky camera as you take a step outside, that is going to be the scene throughout the rest of today. It is going to be similar feeling, however, to the past 2 days, 70 and 73, your high temperatures from Monday and Tuesday, or excuse me, 70 and 72. 73 is your high temperature for today. Got a little bit carried away and ahead of myself, but 73 feeling basically the same. You're a good deal above average by close to around 10 degrees, even despite more cloud cover in the sky. And one of the reasons is going to be this down here that you do see. Southwest winds 5 to 15 miles per hour, but the occasional gust could get up there to around 20 to 25 miles per hour. The gustier those winds are, obviously that's going to propel that warmer and more humid air mass in a little bit quicker than it would, say, with just a light breeze. But having that southerly component to the winds is going to be a big factor for why we just have that warmer and more humid air move in real time. And that is also going to correlate to some warmer temperatures. Remember, as you get an increase in the dew point temperatures, your temperatures also have to go up, even despite the cloudy skies and maybe your typical warming from that sunshine heating the surface. You don't necessarily need as much of that, but that can help contribute to some extra warming, which we do see as we go into Thursday's forecast, which we'll talk about on Future View. I'm getting close to that graphic coming up. So small sprinkle chances. We'll talk about what we see over the course of the rest of today, but it's really just not anything to worry about in the form of rain. You might notice a brief drizzle, and it's going to be very short-lived. I'm talking about a couple of minutes if you do see anything. And along with that, it's not even going to tally enough to record a trace of rainfall. So a trace is getting even below 1/100th of an inch. That's just a couple water droplets that do register on our observation systems, but I don't expect many areas to even record a trace throughout today. So hour by hour, warm up into the upper 60s and eventually peaking somewhere in the low 70s throughout this afternoon. Again, I think we'll get a little bit higher than this graphic, but I did kind of go with a closer number to what this graphic does say as of today because of the cloud cover. If we had crystal clear sunny skies, I more than likely would have forecasted a high temperature about 74, maybe even 75, just judging from what this graphic does say. And given our recent trend on those crystal clear and mostly sunny afternoons, we've gone a couple of degrees above what the model guidance and some of our graphics have been. But then we'll begin the slow cool down as we go into the early evening hours. Don't expect too much of a cool down as we go into these overnight hours each and every night for the foreseeable future. Well, I guess we're just going to go ahead and play Future View all the way through because I was editing it and I forgot to throw some of the pause points on here. So we're going to pull out our handy dandy tool right here, where we're getting way ahead of ourselves with the Mercer baseball forecast. But if you are looking for that Mercer baseball forecast, they are taking on Georgia State later on tonight, and I'll have a event-specific forecast coming up for you in just a second. So let's go ahead and drag Wednesday all the way out to 5 p.m. right here. I guess I'll move out of the camera view so you can see that this does say Wednesday at 5 p.m. Still kind of the same story, but we're not even seeing any of those light green dots. We can spot some of them just to the southeast of Montgomery right there over across the state line. But that's what I mean. The rain chance today is so insignificant and in all honesty, really lower than that 10% that I gave it. So don't go banking on seeing anything in the way of a sprinkle throughout today. The main thing you need to know is there will be some gaps in the cloud cover that we will round out this afternoon with, and you will very likely get some beautiful colors right there around sunset time, especially the lower and lower some of those cloud or that sun angle does get, and maybe some of those beautiful colors reflecting off the bottom of the cloud deck. So let's go into, say, 9 p.m. right here. I'm just going to pause it to show you that we still have the possibility of a sprinkle all throughout the afternoon into the evening time frame. And then let's go ahead and flash forward overnight into early on Tuesday morning, because we don't need to talk about the overnight hours. Many of you are just going to be fast asleep. And all we're really looking at is the cloud cover to get a bit denser and a more filled out in nature as we wake up and walk out the door tomorrow morning. So a couple spotty light showers are already present at the 6 a.m. hour tomorrow morning. Still looking like a very overcast and gloomy start to your Thursday. Then we go into, say, let's stop it here around 8 a.m. where we can see spotty light showers down to the south of us. Who's to say that the next graph model run, those aren't popping up here in south central Georgia? Right now, I'm going off the potential, and I think the potential for seeing a spotty light shower or just a drizzle like what we're talking about today those chances are a little bit greater throughout your Thursday. But still, I think the rain chances are so light, they're not going to really impact any plans that you do have, whether that's your morning commute or your afternoon high temperature, or any plans that you do have in the afternoon, rather, I should say. And I'll go ahead and stand right here now because we can get a view of the timestamp. Thursday at 11 a.m. Cloud cover begins to break apart as we head closer to lunchtime tomorrow, so that is going to be a very good thing. And then as we go into the afternoon, take a look at this, 2, 3 o'clock. It does look like as the cloud cover moves out, a lot of your rain chances do as well. So this is a little bit different than we were seeing on Future View yesterday. It was saying that most of your Thursday afternoon was going to be of the cloudy nature, and it was obviously going to be maybe a bit of a gloomy and a gray into the end of the midweek right there. But we are still going to have about a 20 to 30% chance of seeing a spotty and a brief light shower throughout the day. But these breaks in the cloud cover are also going to help contribute to a more substantial warm up, because we just continue to see these winds coming out of the southwest, and that is propelling that warm and humid air mass from down in the northern Gulf up into central Georgia. And I have a really good graphic to explain that increase in moisture as we go throughout the day on Thursday. And then here we go into 7 p.m. Anything you see in the way of rain chances the next 2 days, it's not worth canceling any outdoor plans. But then the rain chances start to get a bit more significant right as we turn the calendar over into Friday. So 12 a.m. right here at the midnight hour, moving from Thursday into Friday, we already see a couple spotty light showers that are beginning to move into the forecast, and that will continue to be present in a couple spots throughout the early morning hours, as you see right here, going into Friday at 3 a.m., going into around 6 a.m. Once again, you're still seeing these light green shades kind of like scattered out like you're flicking the tip of a paintbrush over central Georgia. Rain chances look a little bit better up to the north, and that is going to be because we do have an approaching frontal boundary. And I think this picture right here, this pause point at 9 a.m., does really show it best. This frontal boundary driving in, and take a look at where the winds start to shift in direction. So they're coming out of the north and the northwest behind the frontal boundary, but where the frontal boundary actually exists is going to be where these winds converge. So you have these southwesterly winds down in South Georgia, you have the northwesterly winds up in northern Alabama and northwestern Georgia, where they converge and then they start to shift direction and go up towards the northeast. That's going to be the frontal boundary itself right here. So a really good depiction of seeing the frontal boundary in real time. A lot of times we don't necessarily get the best depiction of the frontal boundary itself because sometimes we're lacking moisture. Maybe we don't have as strong a forcing behind a cold front, but this one does look to have its fair share of organization to it, and a line of showers will push down into central Georgia, along with some spotty showers kind of clumping and organizing together ahead of the actual boundary. So this is 9 a.m. on Friday, and this is why I am going to go ahead and say break out the rain gear on Thursday night. Go ahead and lay it out on the front of the bed, maybe right there on the coat rack. Make sure that you don't forget that rain jacket or umbrella as you walk out the door on Friday morning, because you very likely are going to need it at some point when venturing out, maybe Friday morning, maybe going into around lunchtime, taking a lunch break. We still see that line of rain popping up here in central Georgia, and then we go into, say, how about evening commute time, 4 to 5 o'clock. Seeing not only some spotty showers, but if I actually drag it back over here, you might even see a couple flashes of some red colors popping up, like right here on the Houston and Peach County line. This doesn't mean that there's going to be a thunderstorm right there on the county line, right there where I-75 goes over into Peach County from areas farther down to the south in Houston County. Overall, what you need to plan on is on and off rain throughout the entire duration of your Friday. This is going to be your best rain chance, and don't be surprised if you hear a few rumbles of thunder, but I'm not forecasting anything in the way of severe weather. I think we're still lacking a good amount of humidity when it does come to that. We need some really humid air to filter in, and along with that, we do have the forcing, so we are going to see this main axis of rain continue to pop up as the front continues to push farther and farther down to the south. But it's not necessarily making that clean sweeping motion through central Georgia. It is having very slow progress, and then you can see our southern counties are going to hold on to some shower, maybe even some thunderstorm chances as we go into Friday evening. Once again, when I say thunderstorm, I'm still not forecasting severe weather, but you may be hearing a couple rumbles of thunder if you're out and about on Friday evening. And then it looks like those rain chances really try to disorganize as we go overnight Friday into Saturday. And then they're beginning to pop up farther up to the north once again. So it does look like maybe this frontal boundary is really struggling to kind of pick apart what it's going to do, but maybe actually sagging back up towards the north after making its initial push into central Georgia, because we can continue to see these southwesterly winds. If the front had already passed through us, the winds would have a more northerly direction. So it looks like it is going to push in and then kind of change its mind and say, nah, I'm going to wait a little bit. I'm going to go back, maybe get my act together up here in northern Georgia before finally kicking back into gear. And it will eventually sweep all the way through central Georgia, but not necessarily going to be Friday or as early as Saturday morning. I think that's going to be more of a Saturday afternoon story. So I think I put pause points on the rest of my graphics. Thanks for bearing with me as I kind of switched over to that side of the screen and maybe wasn't quite as attentive. I had to make sure I was pausing it in the right point where I could make sure that I'm explaining what's going on at what certain portion of the day. So Mercer baseball forecast. I promise you we get to it. First pitch against the Georgia State Panthers, 6 p.m. at Ortho Georgia Park. There's going to be a possible sprinkle chance all throughout the game. It's nothing worth canceling any of your plans to go out to the ballpark tonight for. As we go into 7 p.m., the first couple of innings, you will notice a tad bit of a breeze, maybe just a light pullover weather. 64 degrees is still feeling pretty pleasant in my personal opinion. It's more of a story of some passing cloud cover, all from the evening hours, even just past sunset at 7 p.m. And then as you're getting into the seventh inning stretch around 9 p.m., partly clear skies, temperatures not too much lower than they are 2 hours prior. Overall, I think it's a great night to go out to the ballpark with those pleasant feeling temperatures, not going to deal with a super chilly forecast like you probably have been used to going out to a Mercer baseball game, say in the late months or late portion of February. So it will be a very opportune kind of forecast and a night out at the ballpark to go watch the Mercer Bears, which are a hot team after the first weekend of the year, go take on the Georgia State Panthers, the rivals just up I-75. So back here for your forecast for the next 3 days. 73 for that high temperature today that we talked about and a 10% chance of a sprinkle. Forecast dominated by cloud cover, but not necessarily going to be a gloomy afternoon. Remember, we will get our peaks and glimpses of sunshine that do help contribute to that warm up in the low 70s. But why stop there? How about flirting with 80 on Thursday and into Friday? Increasing rain chances are the main thing that I want you to know between today into tomorrow into Friday and even going into Saturday. If we had a 4-day box graphic, Saturday you would see a 60% chance of rain. Now, I didn't throw a thunderstorm icon on Friday and Saturday as of right now, but like I mentioned, don't be surprised if you hear a couple of rumbles of thunder. If we get more consensus that we are going to see maybe the potential for a few more thunderstorms in the forecast, which I do imagine by tomorrow we'll have a better idea of. I'll throw a thunderstorm icon on Friday and Saturday, but it's not anything to freak out over. If we do have a severe weather risk, we will definitely be letting you know. But right now, we do not have a severe weather risk. This is just a couple kind of run-of-the-mill thunderstorms. What we typically see when you get some moisture back in the forecast and you have high temperatures near 80, which is flirting with an early summertime day at the end of February. So obviously that is what can happen when you have warmer air and you have more humid air in the forecast, which is just going to kind of be a continuous stream and pull of moisture from the northern Gulf over the next couple of days. So 80 degrees for a high temperature both Thursday and Friday. How close is that going to get to the records? So your record for tomorrow afternoon is going to be 82 degrees, set back in 1956. Looks like we're going to fall just shy of that record, but hey, I did show you the clearing in the cloud cover, so who's to say we don't warm up a little bit above what I do have in the forecast, and we still have about 24 hours to figure out and fine-tune that specific number. So maybe I come in tomorrow and I do put an 81 or an 82 on the 7-day forecast. But going into Friday, I think as of right now, that's our best chance at least matching a record of 80 degrees set back in 1991. Now, that's just your afternoon highs. We could also break 2 more records for Thursday and Friday, and that would be with your morning lows. You may say, Alex, it's obviously not going to be near cold as what you have been showing us on the almanac data with some lows of 10 degrees and such. I'm not talking about coldest morning lows. I'm talking about warmest morning lows. We are not going to really feel any sort of chilly spell over the course of the next couple of days whatsoever. 61 is going to be your record warm morning low that we have for Thursday and Friday. That record was set for Thursday back in 2018, so about 8 years ago, but the record of 61 degrees also on Friday was set back in 1961. So my forecasted low for tomorrow morning is 59 degrees. It looks like Friday right now we are forecasted a little bit above what that record does sit at, as I do have a low temperature of 62 degrees, which makes sense. When you have a warm and a humid air mass in the forecast, along with plenty of cloud cover, it doesn't allow for too much of a temperature spread that you would see, say, this time of year during a crystal clear overnight period, and that would allow temperatures to drop down in the overnight and warm up as you go into the afternoon and you receive nothing but sunshine heating up the surface. So in terms of your rainfall, this is all the rainfall that we're looking at over the course of Wednesday. Some very spotty areas where you do see maybe getting to a trace amount of rain, but overall nothing really significant. And even going through Thursday, we don't even see any locations here in central Georgia popping up some totals. It looks like we are going to see maybe a couple hundredths of an inch of rain throughout Thursday. So that's why I'm continuing to say you could probably get away without having the rain gear ready to go on Thursday afternoon. But Friday is going to be where you actually do need the rain jacket and the umbrella, because take a look at your rainfall totals as we go throughout the afternoon into the evening. And this isn't even all the way through the nighttime hours on Friday. This stops at 7 p.m. where we start to see some isolated pockets, which are going to be right there along that frontal boundary stalling here in central Georgia that could get up to maybe close to an inch. But some of the totals that we see here are only maybe up to about a ½ inch, but you can obviously see some of these lighter shades, which are matching up with where the 1 inch mark is going to be on your legend up there at the top. And also in terms of the breezy conditions, don't expect those to go away anytime soon. We'll have occasional gusts up to 20, maybe 22 miles per hour throughout today as we go into tomorrow afternoon. Same thing. It looks like the breeze is a bit more widespread than what we do see throughout this afternoon and going into Friday morning. We are still continuing to have some breezy conditions. Very thankfully, we're not talking about some cold temperatures paired up with breezy conditions to where the wind chill value would be maybe 10 degrees colder than the actual numbers. That is not going to be the case with morning low values starting out near the 60-degree mark. But once again, like I said, just go ahead and get used to the breezy conditions on and off throughout each of the next 3 days. Even as we go into Saturday morning, we have a bit of a light breeze as that frontal boundary is still stalled just up to the north of us, but eventually it will kick back into gear throughout your Saturday afternoon, and it will push all of the rest of the rain out of the forecast by the time we round out the weekend. But what I mean by these southwesterly winds continuing to just pull that warm and that more humid air mass up into central Georgia, we see the dew point temperatures get into the low 60s, maybe even as high as the mid 60s, even some flashes of some dark green down there on the panhandle of Florida. That shouldn't necessarily stretch up into central Georgia, but this is still decent enough moisture to work with ahead of this front coming in. And this graphic shows the best depiction of the front coming in, because take a look at what's behind it. All of this dry air that expands into northern Georgia, up into northern Alabama, but we're kind of a half and half forecast right now. It does look like areas down to the south here in central Georgia are going to be a bit more humid throughout the day on Friday as compared to northern central Georgia, but our dew point temperature is still here in Macon, forecasted in the mid 60s, and it doesn't look like they really waver. But that frontal boundary, it doesn't keep pushing down to the south. It stalls, and then it's going to actually recede back up to the north, where the warmer and the more humid air mass is going to push up into areas of northern Georgia as we go into the early morning hours on Saturday. So your afternoon high temperatures flirting with records Thursday and Friday, of course, but finally a little bit cooler on Saturday. It's still going to be a very spring-like afternoon, and then we will finally start to see the drop. We will finally see that front kick into gear, pass through, and the cooler air mass start to roll in. 64 for a high temperature on Sunday. And then we are going to get into our morning lows, which are going to be well above average and near record-breaking warm numbers for the morning lows. Near the 60-degree mark both Thursday, Friday, and into Saturday. And then finally we drop the numbers back closer to where some numbers did get as of this morning. Not too many areas actually dip down into the 40s. However, we do see that as we go into Sunday. So your long-range models. Now we are seeing this frontal boundary still pop up. Widespread rain chances up in northern Georgia, northern Alabama, and then as we progress throughout the day on Saturday. Here we go. Kicks back into gear. One more round of some showers, maybe a few rumbles of thunder throughout the afternoon on Saturday. Again, we're still not forecasting anything in the way of severe weather courtesy of this, but it will start to clear as we go into the evening and nighttime hours on Saturday. And as we go into Sunday morning, we should be mostly clear. Maybe the GFS is still holding on to a few spotty shower chances, I do think the weekend is going to wrap up on a nice and pleasant note with plenty of sunshine. And that takes us into a pleasant Monday. And by Tuesday, we start to see more clouds trying to creep back into the forecast. And then maybe our next frontal system that comes in sometime around the midweek, the late midweek portion of next week. Again, that's still really far out. We'll continue to fine tune those details as we get closer. So some rainfall totals up to about maybe an inch if we're lucky. Well, it looks like when that frontal boundary kicks back into gear on Saturday, we might add another 0.4 inches of rain to that. But overall, your rainfall totals not looking quite as impressive as what we did see over the course of last weekend. However, depending on where that frontal boundary does stall and maybe how long it does stall over certain areas, it could result in kind of a focal point, an axis kind of like this, where we do see some darker colors. So some areas could luck out and get a good deal more rain than other areas of central Georgia, but we'll continue to keep you posted. So really nothing to worry about in the way of rain chances Wednesday and Thursday. We threw them on there, but they're still not looking too impressive. 50% and a 60% chance of some showers, and very likely going to hear a couple rumbles of thunder throughout Friday afternoon and going into Saturday afternoon before finally we clear out and then we cool down.